Thank you so much for doing this. Appreciate
Absolutely.
it.
Pleasure.
So you were in the chamber when the Pope addressed this joint meeting of
Yes.
Congress. He's had a lot to say about a lot of topics. One of them was life.
Yes.
I know you agree with the Pope when it comes to protecting life at all stages,
Yes.
starting at conception. I don't know your position on the death penalty, which the Pope spoke about at length. Do you agree with him?
I think the death penalty is something that should be decided in a civil matter with the people in the area.
So a state-by-state decision?
Absolutely.
Speaker John Boehner shook the political world Friday when he resigned. A lot of conservatives feel that he and Republican leaders in Congress have sold them out. What do you think?
I think Speaker Boehner had a long and distinguished career. He's being pulled in a lot of different directions. Tends to be a nice guy and is a compromiser at a time when a lot of people on the right feel that too much compromise has already resulted in a situation that they're not very happy with.
One of the issues where a lot of conservatives are mad at Republican leaders for compromising has to do with the funding or defunding of Planned Parenthood. I know you oppose the funding of Planned Parenthood. I interviewed Congressman Paul Ryan about this issue, and he said that it's unrealistic to demand that Planned Parenthood be defunded because the Constitution gives President Obama the power in an equal powers way, and there's just no way, Congressman Ryan said, that this can be forced on the president's desk. Do you agree with that, or do you think that it's worth shutting down the government over?
I think it's worth looking at all the alternatives that we have. You know, throughout my medical career, I constantly had people saying, well, this is the way it has to be done. This is the way it's always been done. This can't be done. I don't listen to that stuff. I think there is a way to get it done.
You think there's a way to force it onto the president?
Absolutely.
What is the way?
I don't know what the way is, but you know, if I were in there, I would be talking with everybody I knew, familiarizing myself with every possible legal aspect, and where there's a will, there's a way.
You said last week, quote, "I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that."
I would advocate that people go back and look at the transcript.
Should a president's faith matter? Should your faith matter to voters?
Well, I guess it depends on what that faith is. If it's inconsistent with the values and principles of America, then of course it should matter. But if it fits within the realm of America and consistent with the Constitution, no problem.
So do you believe that Islam is consistent with the Constitution?
No, I don't. I do not. I would not advocate that we put a Muslim in charge of this nation. I absolutely would not agree with that.
He'd ask you about Islam, if you thought Islam was conducive to the Constitution, and you said Muslims, that you would have a problem with a Muslim being president.
I would have problems with somebody who embraced all the doctrines associated with Islam. If they're not willing to reject, you know, Sharia and all the portions of it that are talked about in the Quran, if they're not willing to reject that and subject that to American values and the Constitution, then of course I wouldn't. And I would ask you, would you be willing to do that? Would you be willing to advocate for somebody who would not do that? Probably not.
I don't assume that because somebody's Muslim that they would put their religion ahead of the U.S. Constitution. And in fact, the U.S. Constitution itself says no religious test.
Yeah, except that I had already said before that anybody from any religion, from any background, if they are, I told you what the criteria were for that. I told Chuck Todd what the criteria were. So he's asking this out of that context.
You don't think that in any way you said anything that could have been said more clearly about Muslims?
I made it very clear.
Because you seem to be singling out Muslims as individuals who automatically, as a knee-jerk, would put their religion ahead of the country, and I think that offended a lot of people, including a lot of patriotic Muslims.
I think the statement stands. Is it possible that maybe the media thinks that it's a bigger deal than the American people do.
I think
Because American people, the majority of them, agree with, and they understand exactly what I'm saying.
I think I've heard from a lot of people who don't think that Muslims can be patriotic who agree with you. And I don't know that if I were running for president, I would want the support of people like that.
Of course Muslims can be patriotic. I've worked with Muslims, I've trained Muslims, I've operated on Muslims. I have a lot of Muslims who are very patriotic, good Americans, and they gladly admit, at least privately, that they don't accept Sharia or the doctrines, and they understand that Islam is a system of living, and it includes the way that you relate to the government. And you cannot, unless you specifically deny that portion of Islam, be a Muslim in good standing. Now, if that is the case, if you're not willing to reject that, then how in the world can you possibly be the president of the United States?
So you are saying that there is something specific about being a Muslim, that you have to reject Islam in order to be a president. That's
Well, you have to reject the tenets of Islam. Yes, you have to.
And that's different from an Orthodox Jew or a devout Christian.
If there's a devout Christian who's running and they refuse to reject the ideals of our Constitution, or if they want to establish a theocracy, I cannot advocate for them.
I guess the point is, you seem to be suggesting that Muslim Americans automatically want a theocracy, and I just don't know any Muslim Americans, and I know plenty who feel that way, even if they are observant Muslims.
Okay, in terms of the tenets of Islam, are you familiar with them?
I'm familiar.
The corpus juris from the authoritative group of the people who make the rules that goes back to the 10th century AD.
I'm familiar with extremist interpretations of plenty of religions.
I'm not talking about extremist interpretations. I'm talking about what is required. And you have to make a specific declaration and decision to reject the portions of it.
What portions of it?
The portions of it that tell you how you treat women, the portions of it that indicate that the kafir, who are the people who are not believers, are subject to different rules, that they can be dominated.
I think one of the things is just, you are a member of a church that there's a lot of misinformation about, the Seventh-day Adventist Church. You're an African American. You know what it's like for people to make false assumptions about you. And you seem to be doing the same thing with Muslims.
In which way am I making a false assumption about
You're
them?
assuming that Muslim Americans put their religion ahead of the country.
I'm assuming that if you accept all the tenets of Islam, that you will have a very difficult time abiding under the Constitution of the United States.
Okay.
This interview is over.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Carson. Appreciate it.